Okay, so welcome. I think this session's called What the Fuck's Going On with Boys? Is that right? So, yes. So if you haven't seen at the moment, we're doing a fundraiser for Feral Philosophy to help young men through weightlifting. I'll tell you why that's a good idea later on and why that may or may not make sense to you. I think most people get it. Let me start with a story. So I went to the gym that I go to regularly and I said, hey, do you mind if we do some filming in here? And the guy behind the counter was a bit scary, testosterone-y kind of, big guy. And I was a bit worried to ask him, but it was his gym. So I thought I'd better have if we did some filming for our sort of fundraising video in there. And he said, what's it for? And I said, well, it's for young men's mental health. And he went immediately, he's quite a young guy. He said, 3 of my friends killed themselves. You can fucking film in here anytime you want. And that has been the same response when I've been talking to people about young men's mental health. From all different kinds of people. They've said things like, oh yes, my son is off the rails. A lot of the project started when sort of a bunch of mums who were either single mums or lesbian mums were giving me their boys. And they were basically like, can you help my teenage boy? Smart mums know they can teach their son some things, but not everything. And I'm sort of trusted by a load of middle-aged women, basically, because of my coaching work. And a bunch of them were like, can you mentor my boy? And I was like, well, I can't just mentor him. I've got to do something with him. As it's just going to be weird. Like the average teenage boy doesn't want to be sat down and talked at, like what the hell? Like, I'll buy you a coffee. It sounds weird. So instead I was like, well, I go to the gym. If he works out, he can come with me. And then, started doing sessions with guys there and realized it was just really helpful for them. As one of the lads said, this is better than therapy. You didn't make me talk about my feelings. But he did talk about his feelings and his girlfriend and his job and all sorts of things. It's because you take the pressure off. In trauma therapy, they call it titration. It's like a little bit on, a little bit off. And naturally that happens with young guys in the gym, because rather than therapy where it's just like talk, it's too intense. You might have noticed you have good conversations with young men while in cars because you're not staring at them. You're heading in the same direction together. Yeah. Okay, so in the next half hour, we're going to look at what the fuck is going on with boys. Why have I had to invent this project? Why am I passionate about this personally as well? Maybe a little bit, but generally the first thing to deal with any problem is actually to understand what the problem is and where it comes from. Okay, that's the same with anything. Like, if you're a doctor, you have to know what the diagnosis is before the medicine. Yeah. Helen, is that true? You're a doctor?
Yes, that's true.
That's true. Hey, thank you, Helen. Appreciate it. Well. Could a few more people turn their cameras on so I can see a few humans? It's nice to see some people I know, like Dr. Wu. Hi, Coach Wu. Marlene, you look frozen, but you're there. Lexa, that's a lovely smile. Danette, nice to see you. And if you do want to add your location to your name, again, it helps me understand the cultural stuff, because this is quite different in different places, I've found. And I've been kind of, I'm in about 20 countries a year for work, and it's definitely worse in some places than others. So yeah, America's probably the most crazy, I would say, followed by sort of Northern and Western Europe, and Southern and Eastern Europe's a little saner. So yeah, the rest of the world I can't talk about right just yet. But. Okay, so the first thing I'd say is, if anyone says that, okay, actually, let's start here. Young men's mental health is really bad by all the statistics. And there's hard statistics and soft statistics. So what I mean by hard statistic would be something like deaths by suicide. I mean, even that has, it has issues with whether they're labeled as such and things like that. But, deaths of despair are actually really high. In the United States, the average mean length of a life has gone down several years. And that's mostly due to deaths of despair from young men. So the life expectancy of being American has gone down, and that blip is mostly due to opiates and suicides. You can look at some of the stats on this. So basically, suicide rates gone up, drug addiction's gone up, and also rates of mental ill health. In young women, they're also pretty sky high, though in young women, suicide's a bit less. Things like anorexia are a bit worse, addiction's usually a bit less, but they often correlated with young women with social media use. And if you want to know about that, it's not, I'm not working with young men as opposed to young women. It's great that people work with either. I've just chosen one group, mostly because it's what I understand, and mentoring tends to be quite gendered, I've found over the years. Young women, for example, you could look up Jonathan Haidt's research, Haidt, his research. Another book I really recommend on is Lost Connections by my friend Johan Hari, who's a British journalist, Hari. He goes into some of the factors, and he basically says, all this mental health crisis is caused by a whole bunch of factors. If you say it's caused by one factor, let's say, it's social media, well, that may be a factor with certain groups or demographics, but things are complex. I'm going to break down some of the major ones. Some of them aren't necessarily what you'd expect. Some of them would be things like economics. For a lot of young guys, for example, they can't get a job, or they can't afford to leave home because there's a housing crisis, places like the UK, most of Western Europe, and that affects self-esteem, that affects their sense of purpose, identity. However, we could really pan back and look at the big picture of being human. Yeah, we could really go back to say, well, what's different now than our Paleolithic ancestry? So we could look at this through various lenses. Let me survey you guys though. Why do you think young men's mental health is so bad? What's your take on it before I give you my version? And it's pretty well researched at this point. Just stick it in the chat. Stick it in the chat. I don't want anyone to sort of give an epic speech. So in the chat, what do you think is some of the main reasons for the deaths of despair, the drug addiction, the mental health crisis, the suicides, etc.? What do you reckon? So it depends where you are. I can see you're everywhere from Kenya to Slovakia to USA, so there's going to be different, maybe in different places. What do you think? Short version, stick it in the chat. Role confusion. Yeah, I'm going to come to that. Yeah. So is alcohol the cause or the symptom? So someone like Gabor Mate would say that, most alcohol drug addiction is a self-soothing. It's a way of dealing with something rather than necessarily the cause itself. That certainly could make things worse. Unemployment is particularly bad for men. It's bad for everyone, but in studies, it's shown particularly bad to men because men traditionally have ascribed a lot of meaning and worth to their job. So when two guys meet, what do you do is the first question people ask, right? And if you a really important factor in a lot of this that people don't like to talk about is status. And it's a big blow to status being unemployed. For most men, I think for women, it's also a blow, but obviously I'm talking in generalizations here. Try not to get upset. The other thing, because I can't not talk in generalizations if we're looking at, men's mental health globally. The other thing I'd say is nothing I'm saying is against women. Okay. So what you often get is a yeah, but kind of thing, right? Yeah, but women have it hard. I know women have it hard in other ways. Like if we were talking about like rates of sexual assault, for example, unless we're talking about America because of the prison system, we'd be way more talking about women than men. Way more if that was today's topic. Yeah, and like most men are quite blind to that, actually, like the prevalence of those kind of things. However, our today's topic is young men. So hold off on the yeah butting if you can for now. Okay, so I'm going to read these. These are good. Yeah, great. Great. Okay, so let's take on role confusion, meaning, and purpose as a big one. So this has been going on in culture since, Nietzsche would say since the death of God, since we became a secular society in many ways. And this is not to say religion's all good, but it is a resilience factor. The idea that what does life mean? What's the point of it all? Yeah. And that's made worse if you then say, okay, traditional roles no longer exist. So it's not clear how I should establish meaning and status, how I should be good. So if you took someone from, I don't know, medieval Europe and said, how do I be a good person? It would have been very clear. You might disagree with it, but from your modern point of view. But from their point of view, it would have been very clear. You're a good Christian, you're a good citizen, you're a good subject, you do this, you do that. And then even in the 19th century, it would have been pretty clear. It would have been, well, you're, a citizen of France and, you have to do this and you fight in a war and you do that. And this is how you be a man. And it's all very clear. And while we may have more freedom now around what we can do and how we create meaning, that is deeply confusing for many people. I'd say we also live in what John Vervaeke calls the meaning crisis. He's one of my favorite philosophers. That more broadly, being a consumer, which is the main role we're allocated by modern society, isn't enough to counter the horror of being human. What do I mean by the horror of being human? Ever had cancer? Don't recommend it. Ever seen anyone die of cancer? Don't recommend it. This is, waiting for many of us. Yeah. Ever lost a loved one? Don't recommend it. Anyone lost a child? I haven't, but I've seen people who have. Absolutely horrific. And this is even in developed West, as it were, right? So life is tricky. It has things like cancer and child death. And in the face of that, we need some meaning or higher purpose. There's a reason that when you get sober, you go to AA and you get a higher power, is that without a higher purpose, most people will medicate the shit out of themselves. Yeah. So even though, AA and 12-step programs like NA have their criticisms, and I think not unfairly, I think one of the things that they got rightly from Jung was the idea that we need to make meaning. Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, very good book on this. The existentialists had their take on it. This, as I said, really since Nietzsche has been a philosophical problem that it's like we've been hurtling towards a wall since Darwin, and we just hit the wall. Makes sense? So it's like Darwin pushed us out of a window, and since then we've been falling, going so far so good, so far so good, so far so good, but we just hit the fucking ground. My sense is there's a minimal amount of meaning people need. Simultaneous to that, there's a minimal amount of community people need. So Johan Hari talks very beautifully about this. People need community, they need co-regulation, they need belonging. That doesn't exist in most of urban society currently. Certain countries, it's better than others. How would you rate your country in terms of community and co-regulation on a scale of 1 to 10, just out of interest? Put, Belgium, 5 out of 10 or whatever in the chat. It might, be micro communities, like the Orthodox Jewish community in North London is very strong. I've got a friend in that. Or maybe you've got a really cool hippie community where you live and you all do conscious dance. But in general, how much social support and co-regulation is there? US, I'd say, is one of the worst for this. Like if you were in my spiritual home of New Jersey, what does it mean to be from New Jersey? Like, or as one of my students in Belgium said, why would you die for Belgium? Doesn't make sense, right? No meaning to die, no meaning to live. Whereas actually 100 years ago, the King of Belgium fought in World War I. He was in the trenches, the King of Belgium. He was a hero in World War I. It actually meant something to be Belgium, even though it's a made-up country at that point. Yeah. Made up by the English, by the way, if you don't know Belgium. So sorry about that, Belgians. Sorry. In UK3, yeah. What does it mean to be British? They try and teach in schools, British values. They have a curriculum around it, but what does it actually mean at this point? So we've lost meaning, but we've also lost co-regulation and social support. And that's what keeps people sane. Those two things. There's lots of other things like physical health and, spirituality, but the main things that keep people sane are each other and a sense of something bigger. And we don't really fucking have those anymore, do we? Now, for example, spend quite a lot of time in Southern Europe, and there's a bit more community there. You'll see old people having ice creams together in the town square and intergenerational contact. And it's not ideal, but in Portugal, Italy, you'll see Spain, you'll see much more of that community belonging and co-regulation. Is that fair to say? Does anyone know the med? Yeah. Yeah, you may have seen this in other places where you go that are quite materially poor, but you go there and you go, well, people still have values and they still care for each other and there's still a sense of togetherness. Maybe they have rituals they do together. And you go, okay, they're relatively successful and rich in other ways. And that's not to say, we should exploit them and it doesn't matter about money. And money matters too, right? Like money is one of the factors here with young men. Young men have been ripped off. Okay, so young men have been ripped off by who? By us and by the baby boomers. They've had their futures sold and they are worse off materially. That's absolutely true. But I think the key thing is that we are the most unsuccessful culture in human history when it comes to meaning, mental health, and belonging. We're fucking losers. Absolutely the absolute loser culture when it comes to those things. Materially, we're pretty good, right? Like aside from this sort of recent blip, which is there's not to be denied, there is a blip in wealth, and particularly like your chances of buying a house in England as a young man are pretty slim. My parents bought a house for a packet of crisps or something, right? was like tenner and a packet of crisps and you got a 3-bedroom semi on a teacher's salary. Fucking try that now. It's $500,000. I'm in the top 5% tax bracket and I can just about afford to buy a 2-bedroom house from scratch. I'm just about to get a big enough loan to buy one. And I'll be in debt the rest of my life if I do that. Yeah. So yeah, blue zones coach, exactly. Good. Okay, so the roles of men, what it is to be masculine. So we've also attacked what it is to be masculine. Yeah. We've said men are toxic, men are bad. And there's, if you look at almost every Hollywood movie from the last 10 years, and certainly at almost every commercial, men have been absolutely mocked mercilessly. The idiot dad is the common one. Homer Simpson, for example, this sort of bumbling idiot dad. That is the media's portrayal of men. Again, hold your yeah buts, please. I'm not in the mood for them today. I know there's sometimes bad portrayals of women too, and not everything's rosy on that side of the fence. But certainly the negative portrayal of men. So you've got young guys who sort of environmentally there's issues like toxins, like testosterone levels are a quarter to what they used to be because of various toxins, for example. Meaning wise, they have less of that. Materially, they're less well off than their parents. And on top of that, they're being insulted on a daily basis and either being encouraged to be toxic, the sort of Andrew Tate kind of side of things, that's their best bet. Andrew Tate, by the way, is an absolute inevitable if you don't give people a healthy masculinity. If you don't give people a healthy way to be strong, they'll look for a kind of character draw. So it's inevitable that is. And also, if you see how many young men have been drawn to Jordan Peterson, love him or hate him, that shows that these were the least fathered young men. So in the past, young men had opportunity to see masculinity both in the workplace because they were more at their father's workplace, also in schools, which have become increasingly feminized. The person I recommend on this is Warren Farrell, who is very female friendly, very kind, nice man, not in any way anti-woman. He's not, kind of nasty red pill or something. Warren Farrell, his boys crisis, I sent it to my girlfriend, for example, who's quite lefty and quite feminist. And she was like, wow, this is great. So he'd be one if you've got boys you could really look into. So so not only is the role of men been unclear, it's been actively insulted. Good. Okay, Cynthia has said in the USA, men are conditioned not to deal with their emotions. Now, here's where we should not be autistic. Boys are not women. Boys are not girls. So the biggest problem boys have is not that they don't talk about their feelings. Okay. It's not to say that's irrelevant. The biggest problem they have is they don't feel useful. If men feel useful, they don't need to talk about their feelings. Therapy has not solved all the world's problems. This sort of American confessional culture, which is very feminine, is wonderful for some people, but is actually, I'd put about 10th on the list. So men not talking about their feelings, that's not the main issue. And if I wanted to make a man feel better about how he was, that would be maybe in there. I mean, sometimes you all need a good listening to. Empathy is helpful. And the world actually has very little sympathy for men's issues, you'll find. It's we generally don't listen to men anyway, but that's not the key thing. If men have a sense of purpose, they don't necessarily need anyone to listen to their feelings. This is really therapists who tend to be three cultural influences. One is women, love them, but they're different from men. Sorry, that's just a fact. Second one is Americans who tend to be very confessional and have a therapy culture. Third one is therapists who, let's face it, are all a bit girly. So therapists are the more feminine men 9 times out of 10. There are exceptions. Adam Lane Smith, if you want to see a masculine therapist, would be a friend of mine I'd recommend, who's a masculine therapist and can tell you about attachment styles from a male point of view. But he is the exception. There are very few. When you get a masculine therapist like Peterson or Adam Lane Smith, men love them. But their main message is not, you need to talk about your feelings. All right. When I take boys to the gym, they will tell me about their feelings, and they'll tell me they love their mums, and they tell me they miss their first love, and they'll tell me very sweet things actually. But what they more come to me is they normally say, I don't know what I'm doing in my life. Their biggest complaint I hear is I feel lost. The other complaint they hear is they lack discipline. So there's lots of things taking them off purpose. So if you think about these fucking things, okay, or porn, or what else? What are some of the temptations men face, what those things do is they pull men away from a sense of purpose. And that's what's unhealthy. You with me? The other thing is if we found ourselves in the condition of what we could call post-modernity, weed, yeah, especially fucking modern weed, but have you smoked it? It's fucking vicious. It's strong stuff. It's not that homegrown we used to smoke in the 60s. No, it's totally different. So, by the way, when I live in a nice town that's quite middle class. If I walk past teenage boys, 90 to 100% of the time they're smoking weed. Yeah, or taking stronger drugs. My girlfriend was visiting from Italy, and there was a boy overdosing on ketamine, which, if you don't know, is a horse tranquilizer that's quite popular amongst young people. And I kind of helped him out a little bit and just made sure his friends were looking after him, and and everyone was really casual, including me and including his friends. And my girlfriend went, "Is this normal?" I went, "Yeah. I mean, it's Friday afternoon. What do you expect? You know?" And she was a little bit shocked because in her sort of rural Italian town, this wouldn't be normal. But certainly in any British city, seeing teenagers taking fairly strong drugs is pretty normal. Pretty normal. Yeah. Again, I don't judge. I think people are coping in the absence of meaning. What are people left with? They're left with they're left with narcissism. So being self-obsessed, which doesn't make you happy. They're left with nihilism, which is I have nothing to do, nothing to believe in. And they're left with hedonism, which looks like an alternative to meaning, but actually just leads to pain and suffering. As someone who used to be a drug addict alcoholic, I've done that experiment and it doesn't end very well. Okay. So let me just give you a little bit of slides. So when I've taught course on resilience, I've taught all this same stuff. So the position we're in now, basically, we're lacking eco-regulation. So nature's very helpful in these circumstances. I better make that bigger. We're lacking co-regulation in community. Self-regulation is difficult because the state everyone's in, and theo-regulation is not there if people don't have a system of religious belief or some other kind of higher power. So because we don't have that stuff, we're left with that. We're left with fragility. So also lack of social skills. A lot of the boys I take to the gym aren't great at socializing. The COVID gap made that worse. Particularly if you're looking online for a girlfriend, for example, which most of them are, the online platforms mean that most boys can't even get a match, let alone they essentially weight things very heavily in the favor of a few of the best looking people. So what you've got is a few boys with hundreds of matches, which encourages, hedonistic behavior, and most boys with no matches. Yeah. So there's an economy, as it were, to dating apps that mean they can't get a girlfriend. So they've got no money, they can't get a girlfriend, they don't believe in anything. They're given these hedonistic options of porn and, the diet's awful, the physical factors. Culturally, they don't feel like they belong, because what the fuck does it mean to be British anymore, or whatever your culture is? Yeah. There's no nature and they're out of their bodies. So this slightly depressing slide is what the fuck is wrong with young men. And I don't blame them for that. If anything, I'd say that's the responsibility of older generation. So that is what the fuck is wrong with young men. Take a breath. Still with me? I know this can be quite upsetting to sort of see it all laid out, but I've had to kind of work it out as best I can. Obviously there's other factors that I haven't mentioned, but there's some of the major ones. Yeah. Good. Yeah, the incel movement. So even the word incel, right? An incel means an involuntary celibate. That just means a boy who doesn't have a girlfriend. So the fact that we're so cruel and we regard incels, we judge incels by the worst behavior of a very small minority of incels, which is, misogynistic and unpleasant. Actually, an incel just means like I've got friends as well as young men I'm coaching who are just socially unskilled, not physically fit, and able to get a match on dating apps. They can't talk to girls in real life because the feminists will attack them if they do and say they're harassing them, and they haven't got the social skills on top of that. They've got no financial resources to take someone for dinner, or let alone to have a house to take the girl back to. So yeah, we call them incels, but what we're really talking about, that's just a discarding, insulting term for unsuccessful young men. Right? We're not actually saying, here's how you get a girlfriend. We're not actually saying, here's how you take care of yourself. Here's how you make money. That's why Andrew Tate was so popular, because he was like, look, I've made money. I've got all these women. You can too. And if you're saying to boys, you need to be nice, say you need listening. No, you need to say, here's how you make money. Here's how you get a girlfriend. You need to be can teach that in an ethical way. Here's how you have self-esteem. Telling kids they're amazing isn't a good way to get self-esteem. It's building their capacities to do something amazing according to their values. That's what gets self-esteem, not telling them they're amazing. That just leads to narcissism. Good experiment, America, but didn't work. So please stop, okay, with the whole telling everyone they're amazing thing. Thanks. Really appreciate trying there. Good. Everyone still with me? This is making sense? Nod if this makes sense. Turn your camera on if I can't see you nodding. Making some kind of sense. Yeah. Okay, so that's the bad news. This is a good news, bad news joke. The good news is there are things you can do about it, okay? Many of which you can do in the gym. So helping people find meaning, that is absolutely essential. In order to do that, you actually need to get in touch with your body and develop a sense of discipline. Discipline is the biggest, when I talk to young guys and their mothers about the problems of young men, lack of discipline and feeling lost are two connected things that come up most often when we surveyed young men. Actually finding meaning, again, is an antidote to hedonism, as is enjoying wholesome pleasure. So the gym is an example of wholesome pleasure. There are, having a nice girlfriend, or, enjoying good food, the Italian version. There's all sorts of antidotes, but the gym is a good starting place because it feels good. Yeah. It also feels empowering. If you take nothing away, take this. Young men don't need love, they need empowerment. If you love them, help them get empowered. That's the key thing. Now, some of you women you're listening, you might be like, no, I want to be loved. Yes, you do. That's not what I'd recommend for young women. They need to be loved and accepted, and it's a very different thing. Yeah, I tell you, a good example is I was taking a young man to the gym, and his phone went off, and I was chatting to him. We were starting the coaching, walking along, is what we often do. And his phone went off, and he took the call, and he chatted for a bit, and he hung up. I said, hey, man, can you do me a favor? When we're together and I'm helping you, can you not answer your phone ever again? And I looked him in the eye, and he kind of, oh, yeah. And he kind of got nervous and put his phone away. And then we did a coaching session. At the end of the session, I said, what was the most useful thing that we did? He said, I'm totally addicted to my phone. I really liked it that you told me not to use it. I'd asserted a boundary with him. And that's something that mothers tend not to do so well. There's a really interesting statistic that mothers set earlier bedtimes, but dads make sure the kids actually get to bed earlier. Does that make sense? So it's essentially it's lack of boundary enforcement. Traditionally, that was dad's job. And the kids I know with single moms and lesbian parents, they often struggle with that. Yeah, we no fault of the women's. The women do all sorts of other wonderful gifts to the children. But this boy said the most impactful thing for him was me setting boundaries with him. That's what he liked best. Yeah, it wasn't me saying I love and accept you. You're brilliant. It was me saying that's not good enough. Don't do that. Jordan Peterson's thing is tidy your room. You'd think that young men would hate being told to tidy their room, but in fact, they go to his webinars and seminars in huge numbers. Narcissism, so you need to give them a sense of service. I think one of the best things I'm going to be doing with this is getting the guys to help younger guys. And in the gym, you give them a skill that they can help with. Yeah, so when I help out the young guys in the gym, I can tell them technique. I can talk to them about diet. The nice thing about the gym is it opens up sleeping better, using your phone less, being less stressed, meditating. I mean, I look up cooking recipes now, Helen. Like literally, I'm there like, oh, high protein pancake shakes. Awesome. I'm researching pancakes and how to make healthy fucking fruit salads because I lift. All right. So the nice thing about the gym is if you lift weights and want to get stronger, you have to sort out everything else. You have to sort out your sleep and your diet and your stress levels. You have to be motivated. So it just naturally spreads to other things. But the carrot is, do you want to be strong? Because young men have always wanted to be strong. What do young boys like? 4-year-old, 5-year-old boy, what do they like? Fucking dinosaurs and trucks and swords. They like anything with power. Yeah, anything with power. Give them a stick, it's a sword or a gun. Yeah. So the carrot is power, physical power, and that helps them develop the discipline and develop the healthy eating and the better sleep and the better friends, etc., etc. The cultural aspects part of this, nature connection, we don't do in the gym, but it's something I encourage. And obviously embodiment, doing the gym in a sort of dojo-like way, which is what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. You can use the gym as a way to get embodiment. I put in the YouTube channel we've launched, for example, has like meta meditations, like kindness meditations as a gym cool down. We have ancestral connection, very pagan, Helen, as a gym warm-up. Yeah, so we use all these things that most of my students would recognize. But on the YouTube channel, we put music and pictures of big guys lifting heavy weights, and it's very macho. And most of you would hate the YouTube channel. You're welcome to go there and have a look, Helen, if you want to share the link. If you've got teenage boys, 15 to 25 is who it's aimed at. So if you're like, I don't like this, you're not meant to like it. So I've had older people go, why is there music over you talking? Because there has to be to hold people's attention. Yeah. So yeah. What I want to do is change the culture of what a gym is to make it more like a dojo. You know, I grew up in Aikido dojos, most of you know. That I think is great for mental health. I would think we can be a really positive influence on young men through online stuff, and I want to train a bunch of PTs. So I had a friend of mine who's a PT training with me recently, and he's like, he got it straight away. A few hours, he got the basic idea. Like we do bench presses as boundary work, we do pull downs as what do you want to bring into your heart. There's so much embodiment stuff you can do in the gym, and PTs just get it really quickly because PTs have worked with all this stuff before, you know, like motivation and discipline, and they're used to it. We're just adding a level of depth that they're not used to. Yeah. So yeah, if you want to support us, I don't want to get all Bob Geldof, but frankly, everybody says this is a good idea, but not enough people are giving us their fucking money. So if you've got some money, give it to us. We'll use it well. It will go a lot further than it will for most charities, I'd say. There's lots of other good people out there doing good stuff, but I think in terms of we can reach millions of people. Like one of the visualizations I had that came to me was 1 million young men who are strong and healthy and mentally well and emotionally well, and what a force for good in the world that could be. And the only way to reach them is online, so that's a major one, plus you know the in-person stuff. So yeah, that would be my request to you is please go at the crowdfunder and drop some money on it. $10, $100, $1,000, depending on how well off you are. A lot of people like this idea, but without money we can't do it, you know. Like it takes I have an editor in India, for example, who's very cheap, but I have to pay him something, you know. Like he's good value for money, Swapnil, and he's fucking good. He makes the videos sexy and appealing to young men, but I have to pay him something. So yeah, we need cash for that. Good. Enjoying the feral philosophy. Yes, you can help the channel out as well. The other thing, if you've got no money at all, which you probably got some, if you've got no money at all, you can share that. So share that on your Facebook or whatever. Send it to your richest friend. Who's your richest friend? Elon Musk. Send it away. Yeah. So good. We need if one rich person dropped 10K on this, we're fucking moving. We're only 25% funded, and we've got like about a week to get the rest. So got to get moving on it. Don't be thinking, oh yeah, I just turn up for free shit. How many of you have had free shit from me over the years? Come on, now's the time to pay back. It's not going to me. I took a bank loan so I don't have to have a salary from this. Took a 7 grand bank loan so I can work salary free for a month. Yeah. So true story, Helen. Helen's also a volunteer. So it's not going to me personally. Wait a second, Dosh. Go to that link that Helen has put, that ends crowdfunder, and you can also get some stuff. So if you ever wanted coaching from me or some of our courses, we've got like bonuses and freebies and nice things. Like, it's actually a cheap way of getting coaching from me. It's cheaper than my normal rates. Good. Any questions at all about why young men are going insane? That's my best take on it. Anything you want to add, Helen? Woman's perspective, maybe?
No, I don't think so. I think you've covered that pretty well. People are clearly interested, clearly listening, clearly want to know more. So do have a look at the page itself. And as Mark said, look at there are freebies, there are goodies that come along with each of the levels of donation as well. So have a look, share it, share the page, share the YouTube, like and comment on the posts on social media and on YouTube, because that means it shares as well. Please.
Yeah, many thanks. Helen's been stalwart in her social media support for this. If you're on the YouTube, leave a comment, leave a like, it boosts the algorithm. So that's also helpful if you're totally broke. Good. Questions, thoughts, comments? Would love a bit more interaction. It's quite emotional for me sometimes talking about this. I had to really, if you look at the video on the crowdfunder, I had to really dig down into my own childhood. I had to talk to my therapist about it. And it's, it was really helpful. It was it's emotional for me because it's I didn't have the best teenage years. And I'm basically trying to be for young men what I needed as a 15-year-old. I'm being, and this is actually a very beautiful thing when you realize it as adults, if you're healthy, you become the person you needed as a kid. Yeah. And it's I didn't have that. My cousin, who was my mentor, killed himself when I was 14, and things were pretty rough for him the next 10 years. And when I got Aikido, and then later on some of the other practices like meditation and weightlifting, things got a lot better. It's got a lot better. I think in our sort of confused world, the nice thing about weightlifting is as soon as you take people to the gym, they start weightlifting, and I've had complete beginners in there, they feel better, just chemically, they feel better. And then their thought process becomes a lot more positive. Yeah. It's also just a positive environment to be in. It's an environment of you can do stuff, and it's okay to be strong, and it's okay to be masculine here. Started taking my girlfriend to the gym. She's never been before. She said, that's a really nice vibe. Like everyone's really respectful and encouraging. I'm like, yeah, most gyms are. Like that's the vibe. The vibe isn't like being a hater, and it's not like fucking social media. Yeah, it's both, Annie. So it's online and in person. Online because it reaches the biggest number of people. Like we could literally get 1 million people, through the different social media platforms, the TikToks and all the things the kids do, Substack, blah, blah, blah. But we've also already booked, so we better have some fucking money to pay for it. A training in London in December for PTs. If that goes well, that's a prototype with my friend who's got a posh gym in London. And then we can train PTs so they can roll this out to, young people. And if this goes well and we can prove it's a good idea, it just so happens that I know someone that's used to getting quite big grants. But the way it works with a grant is you can't just come and ask for £1 million. You need to come and say, here's what we've already done, and here's why you should trust us to give us the money. So if we can do like 6 months of like small projects and online stuff and local stuff, like I'm doing now with the boys locally in Frome, if we can do that, we can then get a big fucking grant and train like loads of PTs and do various other things. So it's a kind of, it's what I call seed money. So like the same, we did the same in Ukraine, right? I don't know if people remember, but 2 years ago, I went to Ukraine, we raised a bunch of money, we raised like 75K, and that helped me do the trainings in Ukraine. But now 2 years later, the Ukrainians are doing their own teacher trainings. So I've mentored them for 2 years. And now they're getting grants off the Red Cross and various other people, but they wouldn't have been able to do it without that seed money that people gave 2 years ago. Yeah. So my big thing is always to start something that continues, or else you have to keep asking for money, which I don't want to fucking do. I've got a business to run. Yeah, we can't do this too often. So yeah, that's my thing, is getting things going that are sustainable. And the Ukraine project was a absolutely successful example of that. They've trained hundreds of thousands of people in person now. So the trainers I trained are now training other trainers. And that is what I think can happen with some of the boys as well. Thank you, Annie. Any other questions or thoughts, additions? I'm sure I've missed things, so feel free to add stuff. Lex is being harassed by her teenage boy there. Eating, that's what boys do. They eat. They do nothing but eat. Can you write a book? I will, but young men don't read books very often. What they, people are like, you got to think differently, right? A TikTok video can reach 1 million people. One of our Instagram reels that we did for something else, 2.8 million people have seen it. My student gets recognized in the street from that reel in Amsterdam. There's some people pleasing. Now that was what happened because we got really good social media. We invested money in it. We spent a year doing it. After a year, we had an overnight success. After a year of fucking hard work and paying someone 20 hours a week. Okay. And all of a sudden our Instagram is huge now and 75,000 people follow it. Like that's, like a book would be great. Maybe for the PTs, that would be helpful, but they look at TikTok and YouTube. That's what they do. Right. So that's what we want to reach them at. I know it's kind of a weird idea if you're like old, like me and Helen. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes people are lucky, they've got good families or they've got good influences, nice communities. Other times, not so much. The other thing that's interesting, the mums have told me this, right? The mums are great. They always text me afterwards saying, "Thank you, Mark." I say the same shit they say, but the boys listen to me and not them. Yeah, like literally, I'm saying the same stuff. Same stuff. Yeah, yeah. There's I think it's wired that teenagers rebel against their parents so they can learn from other people. But teenagers aren't stupid. They want to learn from people with relevant experience, right? So I don't know if you noticed, I got buff. Yeah, the reason I got buff was not for my hot Italian girlfriend. The reason I got buff is because I wanted the boys to take me seriously. So I'm like, well, I need to look the part. So I fucking lost 15 kilograms and, got, spent a fucking year working out. Right. And then they look at you and they go, okay, I want what he's got. I want to look the part. And, he runs a company, he's got a nice girlfriend. So they want it. And then they listen to you and they don't listen to their mum saying the exact same shit. Yeah. It's just one of those things. So sorry, mums. Sometimes they're frustrated. The mum's like, I told him that, but then he said you said it. And okay, sorry, but it's just the way it works. The mums are actually really cool, actually. The mums that are sending me their boys are really cool. Like, they've got a lot of trust. It's really nice, actually. Yeah, exactly. Most of them can't read. So they either can't read or they won't read. I can barely read a book anymore unless it's an audio book. Yep, that is the truth. It's gendered. It just seems to be wired in us. I guess it's from our ancestry, maybe some genetic thing. I don't know. It just seems to be the case. Yeah. Yep. So it's not nothing new in mentoring. And the nice thing is about having something like gym is it's very physical and it gives you something to teach them. And then we start off with like, here's how you lift the bench press. And then it's like, well, here's how you have to eat if you do that. What are you eating? Shit food. Okay, well, that won't do. Okay, wait, do you know your muscles grow when you're asleep? Okay, so how are you sleeping? Oh, I'm not great. I'm on my phone all night. Okay, then maybe fucking don't do that. Yeah. So it's like, you see how it builds into other kind of healthy things once you've got that initial starting point. People open up as well. There's something about working out. Like one young man at the end of the session said, oh, just split up with my girlfriend. It's the first girlfriend he'd ever slept with because he was like 17, right? And he said, does the pain ever go away? And I'm like, yeah. And I told him about my experience of my first love when I was 16. And he just didn't have any reference experience. And he was never going to tell his mum. Yeah. And there's just something about working out together that meant he was a little more, I think it actually breaks down some of that like armoring we have because people's muscles get tired. So they just feel a lot more open. You probably had that experience dancing and doing other physical stuff. Yeah, it's a village, and in the absence of a real village, starting to provide a bit of a virtual village. I hope to have online groups so guys can join in from all over the world, and then we'll use all the different platforms like Discord and some stuff that they use so they can get some connection. I give an example of this. The young men, before I meet them, they WhatsApp me, and the reason they WhatsApp me, A, they don't have Facebook. Sorry, Helen. And B, they're not going to phone me. There's no way. That's like send a pigeon. Send a raven. They're not going to do it. So they WhatsApp me, and that's easier for them. So you learn stuff like this about what makes it easier for them. German content, no, but I'm sure if I've got quite a lot of students in Germany, and I'm sure if this spreads, we will train teachers in every language. We could also probably do some clever auto translation stuff, right, Helen, if we do the online content. All right, why don't we leave it there? So yeah, Helen's crowdfunder. If you've got no money at all, share it. Go to our YouTube videos and like them and comment as well. But main one is share that. Tag your wealthy friends. And if you've got some money and you think I haven't been talking bollocks and we can actually help people, I think we can, then give us money because we can't do this for free. It just costs stuff. Everything we're doing costs money. Even if it's just like, the Indian editor who just, costs a couple of grand, doesn't cost huge amounts of money, but he's got to be paid. Good, exactly. Nice quote, Graham. Thank you. Let's not burn down the village or have them do it. Good. Thank you, Helen, for hosting. Thank you, everyone, for coming and showing interest. It encourages me that so many people are interested in this, men and women. So thank you for feeling like, it encourages me that I feel like I'm not the only one who cares about this stuff. So good.